Here is question 3D. So this question is looking at a particular heading, higher fines discourage disability parking abuse. And they want to look at what some of the issues with the study design are. So the first thing that I want to think about is the wording. Higher fines discourage disability parking abuse. So they're trying to imply that by fining people, that makes a difference to whether or not they park in these disability parks. So this is suggesting causation. It's saying that if we give them a fine, they won't do that. And so that's a very specific type of claim. And what I want you to think about when we think about causation is the only way to prove causation is if we have a properly designed experiment. So if we've got an experiment, then we can say, oh yes, look, it's been randomly allocated and it's designed in the proper way, so it's controlled all the factors except for the ones we want to look at. Therefore, we can prove that doing this will cause that to happen. If it's an observational data, then we can't show that. Okay, so an experimental study, we need to have that the person in charge randomly assigning treatments to those subjects. Then we compare and see what the results say over time. Okay, so that would be a properly designed experiment, and if I have that, I can prove causation. However, if we look at an observational study, as the picture looks there, the person at the front is just standing there observing what people do. They are simply noticing. They're not interfering, they're not deciding you will buy this, you will buy that. They're just noticing what it is that they do. So if we look at the report itself, we need to try and figure out which one has been done. So we're looking for that term randomly assigned. Is that anywhere in this report? Or is there anything in there that tells us it's that the data has been observed? Okay, and we can see there in that paragraph 3, it talks about how the organisation they were observing cars and people. Okay, so that means that is one of our potential problems, is the heading implies that we have got a causal claim or a causation. So that higher fines are what mean that people are parking in these disability parks less. But they haven't, when they've done this, they simply observed what people have done. They haven't controlled all the other factors. They haven't just controlled for whether or not people have been warned about it, that there might be more signage up. It might be that there's been advertising campaigns around asking people not to do it. There could be lots of things, other factors that cause it to happen, not necessarily the fines themselves. Okay, so we can't claim, the heading can't be claimed as it is. Okay, it's a poorly designed heading. But let's have a look at that. So that's one issue. Let's think about another issue. What else could we talk about? So one of the problems is that a lot of the disability parks that they observed were near ATMs, near council offices and supermarkets. So they were looking at particular types of disability parks. And we need to think, well, is that representative of all disability parks? And I could probably say that no, actually it wasn't. They were targeted. They were looking at very specific places. So this is what we call selection bias. The location of those car parks, were not randomly chosen. So we might find that parking at a supermarket, the disability parks there are used differently from, say, parking outside a dairy or parking outside an ATM, and so these in different locations, people may behave differently. And the sample that we've got here is not a random selection, it's not representative of the population, and therefore there is selection bias that has gone through. So that's another potential problem. So for achieved, you needed to specifically look at that idea of observational study versus a experiment where you can prove cause and effect. And you needed to be able to say it's an observational study, so you can't claim that doing giving fines will cause more people to behave properly. So that was your achieved. Your merit was identifying that and saying that you can't make that causal claim. And the excellence was going into more detail. So, for example, explaining some of the other factors, what else could have influenced it instead. So, coming up with a possible issue. So, that whole idea of not representative, we could have said, well, do people behave differently outside parking outside a dairy versus outside a council building? Any of those other factors is what we wanted as well for the excellence. So then that leaves us to marking that last question with the normal N0 through to E8. And then the cut scores, what you needed to do for cut scores in this particular exam last year, a score of 0 to 6 was not achieved. If you got to a 7, between a 7 and a 12, that gave you an achieved. 13 to 18 gave you a merit, and 19 to 24 was an excellence. So they had quite a low band. So for achieved, they actually dropped. Normally it would be at 9. For this particular year, they've dropped it down to a 7. But they've kept the excellence up at the 19, which would be the normal rate.